All righty. Hello, hello, hello. So glad to see everyone. I am really hoping that you are able to not only see me, but hear me as well. This is my very first live video. Welcome to those who are here. I do plan on doing these at least once a month. Basically just kind of a Q&A. So a great time to ask me any questions. I do plan on picking a topic each time that we can discuss. And today we're actually going to be talking about recipe conversions. I've had a lot of questions. People ask me a lot about recipe conversions. And so, especially with the holiday season coming up, everyone's getting those family recipes out and wanting to know how to convert them using freshly milled wheat. So we're going to be getting into that today. I'm also going to be answering some questions that I have received over the past couple of days from people. I'll be answering those as well at the end. So first of all, if you do have any questions, be sure to you can put them in the little comment box. I think it's that way or that way. I'm not sure. I think wait. I'm not sure which way you're seeing this. But be sure to comment. If you are watching this live, be sure to comment first proof, meaning you watched it live. If you are not catching this live, type in the comments second proof to show whether you watched this live or you watched the rebroadcast, because I will be posting these to my channel. So if you do miss some of it or you miss all of it, don't worry. You'll still get this as well. Also, let me know where you're from, and love to know how the weather is there for you. We're getting a lot better here in Florida. It's starting to cool down. So we're now going to talk about recipe conversions. So be sure to grab your pen and paper, because we're going to be going through a lot of information, and hopefully this is going to help you. The thing with recipe conversions is it can be a little tricky. It will take some trial and error, but I'm just kind of going to walk you through the process that I make the process I do when trying to convert a recipe from regular store-bought flour to freshly milled. So general rule of thumb, and I say this all the time. Of course, I did do a video about what grains are used for what. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to do that. But general rule when it comes to your wheat is your hard wheats are for bread, especially your higher bread loaves. So your hard red or your hard white wheats are a higher gluten, higher protein content, which means it's really going to get a good rise for your breads. So you want a hard red or hard white wheat for your breads, and you want a soft white wheat, generally speaking, for your baked goods. And if you're just starting out, those are really the only ones that I recommend starting out with. Don't get overwhelmed with your ancient grains and all the different crazy ones that you hear. That is the advantage of us using freshly milled wheat, is now we have so many different varieties of wheat. And so it can get confusing of, oh, great, now which one do I use? So if you're just starting out, I always say use you need a hard red or hard white wheat berries for your bread loaves, and a soft white wheat, generally speaking, for your baked goods. And I see some people, looks like Texas is winning out of how many Texans are here today. And Able Valley Farm, it's good to see you too. So those are it, generally speaking. Your hard reds, hard whites, high gluten content, perfect for those loaves of bread. Soft white wheat for your baked goods. And that's kind of a general overall thing, rules to use. So one thing about soft white wheat to know is if you are wanting to start experimenting with like your ancient grains, in my experience, spelt and kamut or camus, however you say that, I've yet to figure it out, generally work a lot like a lot like soft white wheat. So that's something, if you do want to start experimenting with ancient grains, your spelt and camus, generally speaking, are fairly easy to work with. if you go to if you go over to einkorn or to emmer, I've noticed that can get crazy. JC, North Carolina, born and bred. Love it. That's so clever. So those are things about if you want to start dabbling in your ancient grains. Einkorn and emmer, I've noticed, different ball game, and you may want to hold off on that until you've gotten a bit of experience under your belt. But spelt and kamut act a lot like soft white wheat. So here are some questions to ask yourself. Hi, Melinda. Here's some questions to ask yourself when you have a recipe and you want to know how to convert it over to freshly milled wheat. So first of all, you need to ask, what are you making? Is it a bread? As in, like, is it a tall yeast loaf? Is it a baked good? Is it a cake? Is it cinnamon rolls? So ask yourself, what are you making? And what is its purpose? And if you see me glance down, I'm constantly looking at my notes here because I want to make sure I get all this for you guys. So biggest thing is, what is its purpose? Does it need to rise? So if you're making a loaf of bread, does it need to rise very high? Or does it just maybe need to rise a little bit or not at all? So if it needs to rise really well, you want a higher gluten or higher protein flour, which is generally going to be reserved for your hard red or your hard white wheat berries. For all your other baked goods, things that might not need to rise as much, if you've seen like my biscuit recipe, that's a bread, but you want to use soft white wheat for it. It does still rise a little bit, but it's not going to be rising crazy amount that you need for your tall yeast loaves. So again, you need to ask yourself, how much does it need to rise? Because that's going to clue you in a lot if you need to go ahead and eliminate a hard red or hard white wheat. If it rises a lot, you want to use that. If it doesn't rise a lot, you probably don't want to go ahead and use your hard red or hard white. Again, it depends on what you're making. So generally speaking, if it's a baked good, that's pretty easy. It's a soft white wheat flour that you want to use. You're not going to want to use a bread flour. It's not going to have a good texture for any of your baked goods. And what I mean by baked goods are like cakes, especially your cinnamon rolls, muffins. Although with muffins, you can use a hard red or hard white wheat. That is an exception sometimes. So that's the thing with baked goods. And again, spelt and kamut, I have found, work a lot like soft white wheat. The second thing, like I said before, is does it need to rise, and does it need to rise a lot? So again, if it needs to rise a lot, you already know you're going to want to use a hard red or hard white wheat flour. So that's with that. Now just remember that even with soft white wheat or your spelt, anything with gluten, if it's not a gluten-free grain, it is going to rise a little bit. And again, that's why we can use soft white wheat with biscuits, still get a tall biscuit because it's rising a little bit. But again, it's not going to rise really big like for your loaves. And I just want to say hi to everyone who is now popped on. We've gotten several new people. If you didn't get it before, if you are watching this live, be sure to comment first proof, meaning that you are telling everyone that you've got this live. Second proof, if you are watching the rebroadcast, you can type in second proof. And don't feel bad because in bread baking, we all know that first and second proofs are very important. So either one, you're doing good to be here. Okay, so this will take practice. When it comes to recipe conversions, you just got to practice with it and don't be afraid. So don't be afraid to experiment. And sometimes you may have to throw something out, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. Just if you fail, try again. I have failed many times. I've been doing this for 10 years and I still fail catastrophically sometimes. Thankfully, I have chickens, which love my disasters. So it's not like a complete waste. But that is the thing, is just experiment. And no, it's okay to do a recipe with store-bought flour first, especially if you've never made it before. Go ahead and use the flour that they state in the recipe. And that gives you an idea of how it should be. How should it be turning out? Is the dough, is it supposed to be a thick dough, or is it supposed to be, like a cake batter type dough, or really runny? That'll give you an idea. So that way, when you switch it over to freshly milled wheat, it's, you'll know how much flour you should be adding based on what the dough should be looking like. So I hope that makes sense. Let me know. Okay, so, and one thing I forgot to mention is a general rule of thumb when you are converting to be using soft white wheat flour, and I've mentioned this in videos before, for every 2 to 3 cups of all-purpose flour that the recipe calls for, you may need to increase your soft white wheat by about half a cup. Of course, just don't dump it all in at once. Add a little bit at a time, but don't be surprised if you may need to add more flour. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Again, it's not an exact and a complete exact science. There will be some give and take, but that is generally something to consider. For every 2 to 3 cups of all-purpose flour the recipe calls for, you may need to increase your soft white wheat for about half a cup. So there you go. Okay, so second big group of questions that I receive a lot is knowing what the flours mean. So for example, if a recipe calls for bread flour, okay, what grain do I need that? What about if it says cake flour or pastry flour? So we're going to get into those. So if you see that in a recipe, first of all, Google it. Whenever for example, I recently made a bread that called for Italian flour. And I didn't know exactly what that was. So I just Googled it, and I Googled what is Italian flour. And this is what it said. In Italy, there are 2 basic types of wheat, Italian word and another Italian word. Now, one is grano duro, is commonly known as durum wheat. Perfect for making pasta and bread. Sometimes durum wheat is even called pasta wheat. Ta-da! So that's telling me the type of grain that is used. And in this case, it was wheat durum, which I did have on hand. So that was quite handy. So I was able to mill some wheat durum to make this particular type of bread. I can't remember how it turned out, but it at least told me what type of grain is used for that type of flour. You can also research a bit more to see if it's needing to be very fine flour. You may need to sift it. Now, again, with a general run-of-the-mill sifter, again, you're not making white flour at home. You will still have some brain and germ, but sifting it lightens up the wheat, as well as gets a little bit of that brain and germ out. So that's a big thing. Google it. If you're not sure, it's usually going to tell you the grains that were used to make that flour. So if you were in the store, just turn it around. Look at the ingredients, and it usually tells you the type of grain. So for example, if you were to go to the store right now and look at bread flour, it would generally see you, hold on guys. I'm going to block someone here. There you go. Okay. Learning new technology. So generally, if you were to go to the store, pick up some flour, turn it around, and it's going to tell you the grain. I've looked at this with King Arthur's bread flour, I believe, and on the back of it, it said hard red wheat. So I know that their bread flour, they use hard red wheat. Yeah, and I did block him, guys. I'm sorry. Again, this is all new to me, so I'm looking here, but yes, that whoever that was has been blocked. Okay, so that'll tell you again the grain that was used. What, is he back? Okay, we're gonna block again. Okay. All right, sorry about that, guys. Okay, I think that worked. Okay, so here is a simple little cheat sheet from what I've seen. If a recipe calls for bread flour, that is going to be a hard red or hard white wheat flour. So bread flour is a high gluten flour. If it's a pastry flour, that is going to be a very fine, soft white wheat flour. So you're going to want to make sure that your soft white wheat flour is milled very fine. Okay. But, and then all-purpose flour, this is one that it just kind of really depends. It depends on what you're making because a lot of people use all-purpose flour for various things. And some all-purpose flour I've seen uses hard red wheat, some uses hard white wheat, some use soft white wheat. So Lily's all-purpose flour that everyone swears is great for biscuits, that's actually with soft white wheat, which is why we use soft white wheat in our biscuits because it does better. So that's one with all-purpose flour. That does depend on what you're making. Italian flour, we've said, is wheat durum. But sometimes you can use like a soft white wheat. Depends on what you're making. Cake flour, if a recipe calls for cake flour, this is going to be a very light, possibly sifted, like a soft white wheat flour. Again, cake, you want it light. You want it delicate. So something to keep in mind with that. And then, of course, if it says self-rising flour, don't panic. You can make your own self-rising flour. All self-rising flour is flour with baking powder and salt added to it. That's it. And you can Google how to make your own self-rising flour. And with self-rising flour, it all depends on what you're making. So if you're making biscuits that require self-rising flour, I would use a soft white wheat, to get those really light biscuits. But generally speaking, self-rising flour, it's just regular flour with some baking powder and salt added to it. That's it. And then if you ever see Vital Wheat gluten flour, this can be a little deceptive because all that is the actual gluten from wheat. It does look like flour, and you can add it into your recipes to make it a lot lighter and everything. So let's see. I keep blocking this guy. I don't know if y'all see this guy's comments. I keep blocking it, and I don't know what's going on. So I apologize for that if you keep seeing spammy comments over here. Okay. So that's the thing with that. So when you see those type of flours in a recipe, bread flour, cake flour, pastry flour, Italian flour, just Google it, first of all, and it'll tell you what grain it's made of. And then think about what you're making. If, things like cakes, do you need it really light? So possibly maybe sift it a little bit, or just use soft white wheat, or maybe spelt, or, something like that. There's different things that you can do. Okay, so that is it with recipe conversions. Thank you for those who keep reporting it. I don't know what's going on. We'll have to figure this out by the next live. So that is general basics for recipe conversions. Thank you, Caitlin. So sweet of you. I hope this is helpful. And again, it is trial by error. I have the tricky part for me is when it comes to baked goods. So like one with a pound cake, I did a video one time where I did a pound cake, and it was the first time making it. And I was showing you my process for converting a family recipe for pound cake over to freshly milled wheat. And it didn't turn out the best. It wasn't horrible, but definitely needs some more tweaking. And that's okay. Again, you just need trial and error. Don't give up. Don't be discouraged. Just keep doing it. So now we're going to get into a couple questions that I received actually just kind of today and yesterday that were very helpful. Very good questions that I figured y'all might want to know the answers to as well. So the first one was on Instagram from Denise. She's been great. I know that you messaged me. And if y'all ever have any questions, comment on my YouTube videos. You can send me a message on Instagram. So I'm on Instagram at Grains and Grit, same as my channel. And you can find me there. And if you message me, I definitely get those faster than email or anything like that. And a lot of times I get the same questions over and over again. So we're going to be answering one of these. And Denise says, I'm still buying dead bread. Any tips on making enough that will last more than a meal or two? Can I freeze the bread and keep most of the vitamins intact? And that is an excellent question. Because it's just a lot of people wonder. So first of all, to talk about the vitamins, keeping the vitamins intact, because if you follow me long enough, if you've been milling your wheat long enough, you know that as soon as you crack open that wheat berry, you mill it, it's now open. We start a lot of the minerals and a lot of the nutrients start oxidizing, especially the vitamin E. And by day 3, 90% of them are completely lost. So that is a big concern. But good news is once you mill that flour and bake it, that generally stops the oxidation, the losing of nutrients. So good news with that one. So you definitely want to wait to mill your grains until you're ready to bake. That way, you'll be able to maintain those nutrients. So answers that question with the vitamins. Now, as far as having it last for more than a meal or two, I generally store my bread in like these bread bags in my pantry. So I don't store them out in the open air. If you do that, that will cause it to become more stale. In my opinion, the only exception to this is if you have made something with a very crusty crust and you want it to stay crusty. Once you cut it, once you slice into it, you need to put the cut side face down, like onto a cutting board or a plate or whatever, have the crust exposed, and that will keep it all crusty, but keeping the middle soft. So that's how to store it. You can store it in your fridge, and I know that bread that I've made, my recipe in the fridge, I can have it last a good week, but close to the end of that week, it does start being a bit more crumbly, definitely more of a stale type bread, but I have had it last. You can also freeze your bread. So I actually have a friend of mine that I've given many loaves to, and she will take my loaf, she will slice it, and then freeze it. So that is the key. You need to slice it first and then freeze it. And then when she wants toast, she just pulls out a frozen slice, puts it in her toaster oven, and voila. So and she said it's great. So right from the freezer, one slice into the toaster oven, and she said it tastes great. So you can freeze a whole loaf, but you need to slice it first. And so and also for making enough, tips on making enough. I actually I have a link for bread bags. I do. I will post that probably in the when this video goes up. I will post it in the description box. I actually just get them from Amazon, and they're just you can get linen ones, or you can even these plastic ones that I even sell my bread in. But I will post that in the description box whenever this video goes up. So that's it with that. What was I saying? Oh yeah, any tips making enough that will last more than a meal or two? I have that problem because for me, one loaf of bread for my family in one meal, especially if I'm doing sandwiches, we can go through almost an entire loaf. So I do make 2 loaves at a time. Now, thankfully, I have these people just keep coming. I'm going to have to figure this out with all the spam comments next time. I'm going to have to figure this out. So with making enough is you just have to make enough, and then just store it in those bread bags. You can put it in the pantry, and they work fine. So I always make 2 loaves at a time, and then I store it, and usually they're gone like in 2 or 3 days. So I'm actually usually making bread every other day. Again, it just depends. A Pullman pan, Melinda. I'm not sure of that. What is? You'll have to tell me what a Pullman pan is. Now I did see another question. Let's see. Eyes to see. I think I found. Okay. I was wondering how to make an all-purpose flour out of grains. I did actually talk about that a little bit earlier. All-purpose. It really just depends on what you're making. So an all-purpose flour in the store is usually made from a hard red, hard white, some of them even soft white wheat flour. So I would start with those grains. Okay. And Melinda said, I recently heard you store fresh milled flour in the freezer for 1 month without losing nutrients. Unfortunately, I have no way to know that as far as testing it, but I do keep flour in my freezer. If I've milled a little extra, I usually keep some in my freezer, to keep it from going bad. And occasionally I need like 1 or 2 tablespoons for a recipe and I don't want to mill, that much. So I usually just pull it out from my freezer. Okay, so let me see here. Oh, they are a nonstick pan with a lid. Oh, that's a Pullman pan. Okay, let's see. Okay, we keep getting all of these spam. Okay. Oh, makes your bread looks like the grocery. Oh, is it one of those like rectangular things with the lid on top? I think Julia Child did one of her bread videos about that with how the French do their little sandwich bread. So it's a rectangular bread with a lid on top. Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I don't have one. I need to get one so I can experiment. Okay. Y'all asking some really great questions. And yes, next time I'm going to have to figure out like maybe my husband moderating or someone to deal with all these spam comments. So I appreciate y'all's patience with all this. Okay. The second question I had, and this is one I get a lot, so we're just going to answer it here. This was someone who sent it to me via email. And it was, I've heard you need to pump nitrogen or deep freeze wheat berries or else the bug eggs will hatch over time. This has not happened to us yet, but do not want it to either. Do you have an easy remedy to keep that from happening? Yes. Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm still blocking people. Okay, so as far as storing grains, let's remember, I always tell people, let's remember that Joseph back in Egypt stored grains for 7 years. Well, it was more than that because they were storing them up during the 7 years of plenty. And then they were using the stored grains for 7 years during the famine. So, and they had no refrigeration then. Now, granted, it is much drier in Egypt, I think, than it is in Florida and the South in general. But generally with your wheat berries, you do not have to freeze them in order to store them. I know a lot of people say you have to do that. Now, I have seen people say you need like the Mylar bags that you can throw in to a wheat bucket. And if I understand it correctly, the purpose of that is to get rid of all oxygen in the container. So that way nothing can survive. Nothing, bugs cannot survive without oxygen. So that would be an easy way if you're not really sure about that. But I personally have never ever frozen wheat berries because here's the danger in freezing wheat berries is that I don't want them to get wet because if they get wet, then they sprout and then they no longer store. So I actually don't recommend freezing wheat berries. But if you want to be safe, you can get those little, like I said, the oxygen absorbers, things like that, and throw them into your bucket. But bottom line is you need a good container with a good lid to keep moisture and bugs out. Okay. So Abel Valley says, I didn't freeze my einkorn berries, and a few weeks back there were tiny mites all over them. So in the freezer went all my berries. Oh, yeah. I've heard of that from people, and I personally have never really experienced that with my wheat berries. But again, you can freeze them. You just need to make sure that they are really, really dry. You don't want them to get wet in the slightest. But I think an easier option might be those little Mylar bags or sorry, the oxygen absorber type things to make sure that there's no oxygen in the container. So again, like I hear people say they haven't had a problem, but I also know, yeah. So, it kind of just depends. Okay. What? Hold on, guys. All these people. Okay. Yeah. We're going to be figuring this out next time. Yeah. So Melinda, yeah, exactly. I just store my wheat berries in a 5-gallon bucket. Wheat berries won't go bad. It kept dry and in a closed container. And that's what I preach about all the time. But again, the dangers of freezing it is because you don't want it to get wet because it can sprout and then spoil. But I think those oxygen absorbers, again, this little thing that you just throw in, ta-da, might be the easier way to go. Now, in saying all this, you do want to freeze your rice and your corn and any type of corn product. This includes your grits, because oh, hide. Okay, trying to block these people. And then I keep hitting the wrong button. I know, and these are really weird. Okay, so we're having a good laugh with all the weird spammers here. So what I was saying is you do want to freeze your rice and your corn products, because I have had that happen before, where little bugs, the little mites hatch out and they go everywhere and it's not good. And I think the reason why you have to freeze your rice and your corn is because they're more starchy of a product. And so I think they're more likely to have those bugs. Just a theory that I have. So again, rice you want to freeze, and I only freeze mine for like 24 hours and then pull it out and dump it in a bucket. and I usually am fine. But you do need to do your grits as well. I didn't think I needed to do my grits, and I learned the hard way with that one. So make sure you do your grits too if you plan on doing this for long-term storage. If you are buying and you're going to be using up, say, like in a month, I wouldn't go through this. I would do it more for like your long-term storage. Okay. So I think that is it. If y'all have any other questions, now would be an excellent time to ask them now. And I appreciate everyone for reporting all the spammers and all that. So let me see here. Make sure I didn't miss any questions. Okay. Yep. I think we're good. Any tips on making homemade noodles using freshly grind wheat? Thanks, Rhonda, for that question. So this is on the list to do. I have tried to make homemade noodles once, and it was an absolute disaster. Just wow, they make it look so much easier. But I do know that Italians use wheat durum. So that is the first thing that I'm going to be doing. And I actually purposely got wheat durum for the sake of trying my own noodles. Now, I actually do not have any sort of pasta maker. So that's also part of the reason why I'm hesitant to do this, because I'm really don't want to make it by hand. But I do need to experiment with that. But just know for noodles, pasta, things like that, Italians generally use wheat durum. So think about that. If you don't have that, you can't find it, I would probably start with like soft white wheat possibly, or maybe even like a spelt. So there you go. Okay, JNC, do you ever use the vacuum sealer for the Mylar bags? Oh, I think that might be for someone else, because I've actually never used Mylar bags ever. Again, I'm kind of a make it simple type of person. I've never used that. Okay, Kim asked, how much grain recommended for a year of bread making? You're doing great. Thank you. Thanks, Kim. Okay, so how much grain recommended for a year of bread making? Look in the description box below. And I actually have a free grain calculator that you can use to calculate how much wheat that you need for your amount of people, for how much bread that you make. And again, it's general, but it's completely free. And it's a little simple calculator. If you know how to do your taxes, you can do this. And you can click on that below to get that, to roughly calculate how much you're going to need for a month, for a year, however long you're wanting to store wheat. Okay, Melinda asked, where would you find durum wheat? I find wheat durum. I got mine from Azure Standard. So again, link below in the description box for Azure Standard. They have like all kinds of wheat, but that was the last ones that I bought. They did have them in stock, wheat durum. Okay, Michelle, do you ever make tortillas? I do. Now, confession. Corn tortillas is made from masa harina, which that is a whole process to get masa harina flour. It is whole corn that is soaked in cow lime is what it's called, or lime. It is soaked overnight, and then it's this whole processing to get to masa harina. So that is actually something I am working on. I am going to be, I do want to master making masa harina from whole corn so I can share with you guys. But for now, that's like the only type of grain that I buy from the store is masa harina. to make corn tortillas. Now, flour tortillas, I am still working on getting a good recipe for with freshly milled wheat. But corn tortillas, we are huge Mexican fans, like authentic Mexican food here. So yes, I make a lot of corn tortillas, and that was also a process. So if you want me to do that video about corn tortillas with masa harina from the store, I will definitely think about doing that. Okay, and I think someone asked me, I can't remember, something about yeast bread rolls. Coming up, I do plan in the next few weeks doing like a little Thanksgiving series where we're going to be talking about different types of recipes for Thanksgiving using your freshly milled wheat, your whole grains, things like that. And I will be sharing with you how I do my rolls. But generally speaking, you can actually just use a basic bread recipe like mine with the large loaves, and just use that same dough, roll them up in a size of maybe the size about of a golf ball, and put them like in your muffin tins, or actually have a brownie pan, and I put those in to make my little rolls. And no one knows, but those are pretty basic rolls. So that's something that you can do. Okay, let me see. Yeah, make some rolls for Thanksgiving. Yeah, I will be doing that. And that's when I do make rolls, that is generally what I do, is I just use the same recipe, but add on, just do it. You can, again, muffin pans, the best shape is if you have one of those brownie pans that have like, we could put the individual brownies in. I've actually never cooked brownies in that. I use them for my rolls because it makes the best shape, but you can do it in muffin tins as well. Okay, and yes, I would like to see your masa tortillas. Yeah, I do want to do a video because it took me forever to figure out how to cook masa harina, corn tortillas. Oh man, did it take some trial and error. Both of me and my husband as well. We've been to Mexico and we were like, we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure this out. And we did. So, yeah, I'll have to do that. But ultimately, I want to make my own masa harina from whole corn, but I have to wait to get that order in from Azure. So, okay, I think that's all the questions from you guys. Again, any more, you can message me on Instagram at Grains and Grits. That's a great way to get a hold of me. You can email me at Felicia@grainsandgrit.com. You can also go to my website, grainsandgrit.com, and contact me there. And if you are wanting to know how much wheat and grains in general that you're needing for your family for however long, check out my free grain calculator below in the description box. That is sent to you, and you can easily calculate it out, how much grains that you need. But if that is it, I think that's all the questions. This was wonderful. Thank you guys so much for coming to me here for a live Q&A, and I love answering your questions. And I'm so sorry about all the crazy spammers. I'm going to have to figure that out for next time. But I do plan on doing these every month. Right now we have, it looks like Tuesday evenings, the first of the month. It's pretty good. Again, you can always watch the replay. This will be posted. And y'all let me know if you got any more questions or if another time is better for y'all. And I hope y'all have a wonderful evening. Enjoy it with your families. And I will see you guys later on. Bye.